We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the Cash Flow Pro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of Cash Flow Pro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. And I'm going to go ahead and set the stage for you. I've got a guy here. His name's Mike Morawski. His company is My Core Intentions. And I was told about 5 seconds before I hit the record button to buckle up. So I am buckled up, I am strapped in, and I am ready for the ride. Mike, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Casey. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. And I can't wait to get to dive into this because with so many different facets of interest that's going to be surrounded or that surrounds your story, I just can't wait to hear and then eventually lead it into what our listeners usually like to talk about and hear and listen to is syndication and real estate stuff, which can be a little bit can be a little bit pasty, I guess, at times. So go ahead, introduce yourself, and let's dive into it.
Sure. Thanks, Casey. I'm Mike Morawski. I'm in Chicago. My company is My Core Intentions. Been in real estate 30 years. My experience started on the residential side. I actually had a general contracting business. And, like any entrepreneur, you're in the grain every day, grinding it out, and you're doing marketing and sales and contracts and ordering material and hiring people and firing people, doing all the bookkeeping. And I happen to still be in the field pounding nails at the time. And I can remember waking up one morning and just being totally burnt out, looking at my wife at the time saying, I can't do this anymore. And fortunately, I had somebody knocking on my door that wanted to buy the company, and I went and sold the company. Took a year off, and if you know me, you'd know I'd never take a year off. But we house hacked a couple of houses. Now, Casey, this is 30 years ago, before it was sexy, right? Everybody house hacks today. It's the thing to do. Back then, she was screaming at me because there were nails on the floor. And I always.
Yep.
I had heard Jim Rohn speak years ago, who said, success leaves clues. And if you follow successful people in their success or even in their failure, you can learn from them and shorten your learning curve. So that always stuck with me. Well, during that time that I took that year off, I met a real estate agent who did a lot of business, was really successful, and went to him and thought I started talking to him about going into the business. And he said, man, Mike, I think you'd be great at it. He went out, made me a cassette tape that I could listen to. And I equate that to these podcasts today. You can go back and listen to these over and over again. And I just absorbed the knowledge. I soaked it all in. And I went into real estate. My first 9 months in the business, I sold 78 houses.
What year? What year is this?
91.
Okay.
Yep, just coming off a downturn. And the saying in the office was, man, houses are selling before the sign quits vibrating that they put in the front yard.
Yeah.
So
we just came through that.
Yeah.
Or we're just on the tail end of that right now.
Yeah, it's a tailwind now. But I built a team selling 125 homes a year and did that for about 12 years consecutively. And in 2005, I saw the market starting to shift and soften, and decided that I would need to go do something else. And, I had 7 people working for me, didn't want to have to lay anybody off. And so I decided to go in the apartment business. And Casey, I always tell people, I say, look, I didn't just wake up one morning and say, hey, this would be a great idea. But it was one of those visions I had, one of those dreams I had. I had done a lot of work for a couple of large syndicators here in Chicago, when I was in the construction business, and I understood the model, right? You raise private equity, you marry it with a great real estate deal, you stay in the middle, and as long as everything goes well, you do well. Well, 2005, I syndicated my first apartment deal. And from there, I went out, I raised $18 million. I bought $60 million worth of real estate. It was 4,000 apartments in 5 US markets. And I did that in 30 months. Grew
Wow.
very unstable as a company, but
Hmm. Man.
you want me to keep going, or you want to
Yeah.
unpack any of that?
I'm 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 the type of person that has to absorb,
Okay.
and I'm always intrigued. So obviously your speed to market, your speed to growth has always been like I guess a key characteristic of yours. You
Yeah.
get something, you find the working model, and then you just go boom all the way in. You go deep. It seems like.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
pretty tenacious, so I always stay pretty focused.
so yeah, I'm just a little. You said you started in '05,
Yeah. Oh,
and
'05 started to syndicate.
yeah,
Syndicated.
started to syndicate, and you said $18 million was your first year,
No, first 30 months. So in
first 30 months. Okay, so two and a
30
half
months.
years.
Yeah. So
So
first 30 months.
2007 and a half, you, and then you made mention there at the end, we grew very unstable.
Yeah.
Um, and I think because this is obviously where the story is going to shift. We've already seen that because we all know what happened 07, 08, 09.
Yeah.
But I would like to maybe pick apart a little bit '05 to '07. And as you're raising money in private equity and you're buying these 4,000 units across 5 US markets, um, what are your greatest challenges? And were some of those challenges things that ultimately led to the undoing, or were they new challenges that arose after you were so far deep? I guess I'm just, which kind of like Paul Harvey said, I guess we need to get to kind of the rest of the story so that we know. I just, man, that's unbelievable. 2.5 years to raise that much and then grow unstable. So what was unstable?
Yeah, so we grew really fast, and I thought I had a team behind me that was stabilizing properties. And the other point I want to make is not only did we grow that portfolio, but I also grew a property management company that was managing 7,500 units. So I grew a company pretty close to $100 million in value during
Were
that time.
they managing your 4,000 plus another 3,500?
Yes, yes, that was the simple math around
Now,
it. Right.
I think I heard one word in there. I heard one word in that entire last, say, 2 sentences that I think I know where this is going to go. You said, I thought. Thought was the word I
Yeah,
heard.
yeah,
And I know from experience myself, and I know my listeners always hear my experience because I'm constantly analyzing what I'm hearing and then relating it back to like, man, golly, I can't believe I have a tendency myself to I don't know if it's my mind outruns my feet or what, because it's the same it's the same scenario where you get something in place, and then you think that that's operating well, and you're like, okay, all right, I've been watching this for 2 weeks, it's operating good, it has to be able to operate good when I'm not looking.
yeah,
And then you turn, you look, you move on to the next thing, and then you come back and you find out that that person that you hired to take care of this thing that you watched for 2 weeks really wasn't the fit you thought they were. Or I've never been in a position where anybody was taking money or anything like that from that spot, but I've circled back around and I look over there and I'm like, okay, they can't be doing what I told them to do because they're just sitting there. Something along those lines.
right.
So
Yeah, so I thought I had a team that was stabilizing property behind me, and I was focused on raising capital, and I was focused on finding deals
yeah,
and building relationships, and doing.
which is what all these people that we bring on this show, that's all we ever hear about. All we ever hear about is okay, how to find the next deal or how to raise the next capital. We don't ever hear about, hey, you need to get this. You need to basically have everybody lock in arms, and you need to be in a circle. And you need, the tighter you get, the better you are, and the more you can watch. But we always hear about these. That's all we hear about: raising capital and finding deals, and that's all anybody ever wants to know about. But they don't want to know about how to sharpen the pencil in between the two.
Yeah. Well, nobody likes property management.
No.
It's not a sexy thing to deal with. That's where the rubber meets the road. And if your if the asset management piece isn't in place, and there's a difference between property management and asset management. But if that asset management isn't in place and really tightened, and as you said, sharp, a sharp pencil, you're going to have challenges. Um, I had people around me that just obviously couldn't follow a simple business plan on how to stabilize a property. We'd buy a property and we'd have write out a business plan on it. This is what needs to happen, and you know, um, those guidelines didn't get followed. Those fundamentals didn't get put into place, and because of that, when 2008 rolled around, it was like hitting a brick wall in a freight train. Um, and we came off the rails. And a big part of it was we grew so fast, right? We had all these assets. I had 38 companies, right? I had over 100 people working for me, and it was just it showed up so fast. And Casey, I remember I was at lunch in 2008 with my CFO, and the news was on. And I looked over and they were carrying boxes out of Lehman Brothers by the dozens.
Mhm.
And I said to my CFO, I said, "We're screwed, aren't we?" He said, "Yeah, we're in big trouble." And I don't know that I knew the magnitude of that at that exact moment, but it wasn't but a few months later that we started to really come off the rails. I always tell people I did 5 things wrong. I grew very unstable as a company. I was undercapitalized as a company, and I was over leveraged. I owned $60 million worth of real estate at 85% loan to value. And I don't know who was worse, me for taking the money or the banks for giving it to me. But I tell people today, don't be in a deal unless you're 65%, 70% LTV, because you need that space today, especially with the market that
Do
we're
you
heading
think that
into.
that 65 to 70% would have, if you hadn't been 85, let's say 85 to 70, and let's go through the rest of the story. But I'm thinking, when you say you were undercapitalized, I mean, if you'd only raised 15% of the equity, are you talking about undercapitalized in general? Or are you talking about
Yeah.
undercapitalized in like each deal where you were raising not you weren't raising enough money and had enough equity there to operate?
Yeah, kind of a combination of both. A combination of both. We should have raised more capital for the deals, and which would have given us more revenue, more runway overall.
Okay. So
So
you grew unstable. The wheel,
2000, by the time 2010 showed up, I was half off the rails. And I had companies that were performing well, some that weren't performing. I should have just let 12 deals go to foreclosure and a few investors get hurt, but I tried to save the company. And what I did was I started moving money between companies. So I would take money from profitable platforms and put them on non-profitable platforms in hopes that I could save the ship. Benjamin Franklin said that a slow leak will sink a great ship. And I had slow leaks in these other places based on job losses and businesses closing up. Or when we were in markets that didn't have a lot of diversified employment. They were,
Can you name the
Sin,
markets just so we have some context to
yeah,
that?
sure. Cincinnati. Cincinnati's a big transportation hub. FedEx and when transportation got hurt and people got laid off and jobs were lost, people had to move out. They couldn't pay their rent anymore. I was in, um, between Cincinnati and Indianapolis and Dayton, that whole Ohio Valley. The other thing is small manufacturing firms for the car industry. So they made like knobs for radios and dashboards and springs for seats. And when the car industry got hit, all those manufacturers started to close up. Today I look in markets that are more diversified. Your Tampa, your Dallas, where you have more industry, more diversification. So your job growth is higher because of the population growth. And those are things that we just didn't pay enough attention to back then. Um, you know, so so I start moving money back and forth between companies, and my thought, Casey, was that this is just a recession. Recessions last 12 to 18 months. There's a 10 to 12% correction in the market, and it bounces back. So my accountant, my attorney both said, "Hey, it's okay. Go ahead, move money back and forth. Just leave a paper trail, so when the money come or the markets come back, you could put the money back." Well, the markets really didn't come back. And I wound up being charged on wire fraud and mail fraud charges for non disclosure to my investors. So, all that movement of money, I never told anybody. I kept it, I didn't disclose it to my investors. And as a result of that non disclosure, I got sentenced to 10 years in federal prison.
Gosh, dang.
So, so in 2013, we lost everything. I wound up going to federal prison on this 10-year prison sentence. And I always tell people, Casey, I say, look, I never flew private. I didn't have a big boat. I didn't have a fancy house or a big car. I was the neighborhood baseball coach. I was home every night for dinner. And I got ripped from that to live in a 12 by 12 room with three men I didn't know, nor did I like.
Mm,
And wondering what the hell happened in my life.
man,
Um,
what a tumble. And
yeah.
I mean, seeing I'm trying to soak in, and sometimes soaking in things and thinking of questions don't go real well with podcasting. But because we talk about all the sexy parts of this business, the deal finding, the capital raising, the but and part of what has really bothered me a little bit about the time that we just came from is that the market is shifting, and some of these underwriting analyses have been a little bit heavy in one area or another and aren't diversified enough, because basically I've oftentimes said my company needs to be called 3000 Diversified Capital, because we're diversified across markets, we're diversified across asset classes, we're diversified across operators, we're diversified, I guess markets, but geographically speaking, in different, so that we have. But it sounds to me like a little bit like you were somewhat a victim of circumstances to a certain degree. But the fact of the matter is that was like by 2010, like everything was completely washing out from the bottom, like everything. There was no possible way the market was going to come back until everybody like yourself was washed out, completely washed out, and we were back at square one. And that's so unfortunate. And so 13, you get sentenced to 10 years in federal prison.
Yeah.
Um,
So I think my life is over, right? So I'm in prison. I'm gone for maybe about 21 days. And then my wife decides she's going to divorce me. And when that happened, that really sent me into a downward
oh,
fall. Wasn't really sure how I'd get through one day, much less 10 years. Um, and the joke in prison was, "Hey, take his shoelaces because we're afraid he's going to hurt himself." And I walk in the gym one day about but I was probably in prison 6 weeks, 2 months, right about that time frame. And I walk in the gym one day, and I always tell people, I say, hey, look, I was just window shopping. I wasn't looking to buy anything. I had gone from running marathons to being 35 pounds overweight. I absolutely hated myself. But this guy walks up to me and he says, hey, don't let these people beat you. All they want to do is take from you everything you've ever known. And they can take your business, they can take your apartments, they can destroy your family. But what they can't take is what you're made of and what helped you to build that $100 million company, what helped you to be so successful in your past. Said, they can take everything else from you, but you've got what's inside. He goes, come to my class every day, start working out. You'll start losing weight. You'll start feeling better. And, I don't know what it was, but I really believe we all have these defining
Is this
moments
a
in our
fellow
life.
prisoner?
Yeah, just another inmate. And, it was like a switch flipped for me. And I said, okay. And I decided to go to this class and started working out. I started losing weight and feeling better. Casey, I wound up going to college. I got a 4-year bachelor's degree in
Wow.
theology. I wrote 2 books while I was gone. One is Exit Plan, Your Complete Guide to Multifamily Investing, and why you need an exit plan before you buy. I'd love to give your listeners a copy at the end of the
Sure.
show. Um, I wrote a book on property management, and I wrote an ethics course. I taught real estate investing, property management, and ethics in prison for 6 years. And I always say how ironic a federal inmate teaching ethics in
Yep.
prison, right?
Yeah.
Um, I was on
But
an outreach.
what better teacher to have in those lessons than somebody that's actually, and I think that's what we always talk about, like applying the things we learned in school to the real world. There isn't always a
Yeah,
square peg for the square hole type setup. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times it's everything you've learned in school is in a perfect world, and everything you so when you start learning from somebody that didn't necessarily apply those perfect world techniques to a perfect world scenario, and now you're like, hey man, this is what happened. I mean, no, I mean, and I think in the post, I call it the post Donald Trump era, not for political reasons, but like, do you know, like, there's some people out there who would take your situation, and no matter what you did, they're constantly gonna try to stomp on you. Like, why are you listening to this guy? He's been to prison. Why are you listening to this guy? He's this. Why are you listening to the guy? He's that. And there's a segment of the population out there that is so adverse adversely positioned to people like yourself, like, hey, okay, here's this guy. Yes, he screwed up, but what can we learn? And instead of saying what can we learn, they just berate you and then stomp you in the ground. But when you start looking and saying, hey, okay, this guy had these lessons, and now he can talk about these lessons because you can teach us. And the ethics part of it, I don't know that the ethics part of it necessarily is very troublesome to me, because when until you're in these business deals and you really see how things like that, how easily something like that could happen to all of us, um, I don't think that's necessarily it's not nearly as ironic to me, I guess, because it seems like you had a pretty
yeah,
solid business and a solid business plan. It just just got messed up. So I just,
yeah. Part of it was market driven.
yeah,
A big chunk of it was market driven, and the Feds had to make some examples, and um, you, you know, and listen, don't get me wrong, I broke the law. When we raise capital or we're dealing with other people's investments, we're held at a much higher level. The standard has to be much higher. And, I didn't tell my
yeah,
investors. So that non disclosure piece was a huge piece. Um, so, just a couple other things, I was on this outreach program. I would go into the community. I told my story like 40 times to local business owners and college students. I met a professor from the University of Minnesota, and he and I co authored a paper together that last year got published in the Business Journal of Ethics. Uh, that gets taught at the collegiate level for forensic accounting and sales and marketing
Wow.
classes. And I'm home today. I'm in the coaching and training business. I work with multifamily investors, helping them live a more balanced lifestyle and not make the mistakes I made. And I was approved by the SEC to go back and be an issuer of securities and a sponsor of deals. And just recently, bought our first 40 unit apartment
Man, that's
complex.
kick
So,
ass.
um,
Talk about a
yeah,
whoop ass story. The
yeah,
end of that story is great. I love that. And that's part of the reason, there's a lot of times, again, to analyze and bring back to and try to position myself in within the lens that I look through is I look through the same. I look through a divorce lens, a divorce that then ultimately caused bankruptcy, and then a divorce that I had to choose between my kids and my goods, and decided obviously kids was the route that I was put on this earth for. So, or that I brought them onto this earth, and I couldn't abandon them, so I just let the stuff go through the form of bankruptcy,
yeah,
not through necessarily the form of me being like mismanaging and just living a, like you said, private plane, things like that. But it's the same scenario where then you come out on the other side and you're like, damn, wow, that really wasn't that bad. 10 years, you made it. 10 years, or well, I assume you probably, what year did you get out?
yeah. 2020, I came home the week they closed the world
Oh,
down for the
wow.
pandemic. So I went from one prison right into
Yeah.
another, right? But hey, you bring up a good point about your divorce, right? So here's the deal. I believe that you can't let your past define you. Obviously, you haven't. I haven't. And I think there's so many people in our society, in our world, that allow their past to define them, and
And
they
it
don't
leaves
move
them very
forward.
timid.
I could very easily stay stuck, right? Pull the covers over my head. But, what good is that? That doesn't do anybody any good. Not me, not you, not
No.
anybody around me.
Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the Cash Flow Pro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making Cash Flow Pro part of your day. Now, back to the show.
There's a power in moving forward, and so you can't let your past define you. And I really think so many people are trapped in these prisons in their own mind. I might have been behind a wall, but the people that are trapped in past addictions, in abuse, in failure, you know move
Yeah.
on with your life. Don't let that stuff dictate
Yeah.
who you are
And then,
today.
I guess to go back to my, to not being political, saying the post Donald Trump era, um, and trying to, there's trying to weed out those people that are finger pointers, because you have,
Mm,
like, let's say you have a thousand people, right? You've probably got three of them that are going to be the loudest in the room, finger pointing, talking about you this, you that, you didn't do that, and then you've got 997 who are just quiet. They don't say a word. They take in what you're saying, and then they proceed. And then those are the people that grow. And the thing is that the three finger pointers, the three people that were yelling, telling you all the things you had done wrong, or continuing to bark all of the things that you had done wrong, they're still standing over here, right? You and these
you're right.
997 other people have now moved forward, and you're looking at the future, you're checking out the horizon, you're figuring out what your next move can be. And you know what? Every day that goes by, you get further and further separated from those three people that were barking and pointing and looking and whatever. And so, a way to tackle your story, though, because once you pursue the vocal part of your insecurities, right? Which believe me, everything that you went through could lead to one big insecurity within yourself. But once you accept it, once you state, hey, I did this, I fucked up, this was my doings, and I'm here to talk about it. I'm here to not praise it. I'm here to tell you what I did. Hey, that's the best way. Hey, I just got off a podcast not long ago where a guy and I were talking about raising money, right? And I made the statement, and you can write this down. Use this in whatever you want, but I'm going to tell you, you will raise more money and have a more successful business by telling people what can go wrong than you ever can by showing them all of the shiny objects over here. And it's just like you. Hey, listen, this was me. I messed up. I didn't do it intentionally. I didn't necessarily do it and that's where I guess you would say I didn't necessarily do it intentionally, even though you did, but you weren't doing it out of malice. You were doing it out of necessity, trying to buy time. And that's human nature in a way. And in a way, it's, I guess, fraudulent as well, even though that's not necessarily.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll way to go on getting kind of digging out of the hole. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the damn
appreciate
divorce
that.
is just a whole nother cracked egg. I mean, it's like, gosh damn it. You get knocked down, and then it's like, oh, hey, that son bitch is on the ground. Let's go over there and let's kick him. And then,
Oh,
you're locked up, and now, and at the same time, my divorce was the product of two people. At the time, both of us did this, pointed fingers, what the other one had done. The divorce itself was a product of two people's not growing unstable. Basically, the same scenario as your company going under. So, well,
yeah.
well, man, what a valuable lesson, and what a way to bring it to people, and your mess becomes your message. So
Yeah.
where are we
For
at
sure.
today? What's
Absolutely.
the you said you just bought a 40 unit complex, raised how much?
Yep. So two of my coaching clients and I partnered together. So I like to work with people that, want it as bad as I do. I found a deal. I had underwritten about 80 deals, wrote 7 LOIs on those 80 deals. I was the bridesmaid 6 times and got to the altar once. And so we bought this deal. I took it to one of my coaching clients. I said, hey, Kevin, I think we should do this. And we got about a week into it, and I said, look, we're not going to, neither one of us is detail oriented. We need to go get somebody else that can handle all of the compliance stuff. So we went and got Rochelle, who joined us as a partner, and the three of us, did a deal together. It was their first multifamily, and it was, my first comeback multifamily. And, we are blowing away early expectations on the deal. We already took it. We originally underwrote it at 17% IRR to the investors, and we've already exceeded that. We're about 19% return on it.
Where's the deal located at?
It's just it's in Tampa.
Golly,
it's in
man,
Tampa.
you go south of that Florida border, man, everything gets crazy. Everybody's making money hand over fist down there.
That's what happens when you live in a red state.
You're in Chicago, found a deal in Tampa. How did you find the deal?
Yeah. Broker relationships. So I went out and I continually build relationships with brokers, because it's one thing to have a deal come across your desk. It's another thing to have a relationship with a broker that when you're in a bidding war, the broker's going to go to bat for you. Right.
Yeah. And that's what, and I was on, again, the voice of everything you hear when I say, hey, I was talking to a guy, there's about a 90% chance I was talking to a guy on a podcast, right? So I was talking to a guy on a podcast, and we were talking about the broker relationships. And he's like, man, this one deal, I was the second best offer. I was the best money, far second in terms. I'm sorry. He was the best terms, far second in money. And
Got it.
Actually, I say far second. That's not fair because I don't know. He was second in money, best in terms, and the broker went to bat for him, and he got the deal. And he got the deal because the broker's like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
man, these people close fast. There's no problem." Matter of fact, I'm not 100% sure he's not. Yes, he's in the Tampa market. He's in the Tampa market, and he's in Cleveland. He's in Cleveland. Got an office in Cleveland. Got an office in the Tampa market, and the broker brought him the Tampa deal. And I was just astounded
Nice.
at that. And I love the thought because I come from the broker world, right? So I'm very keen and very knowledgeable about how those relationships can be. And oftentimes people in our small town here never could understand when I'd be like, people think realtors or real estate agents are like we're their pissing poles, if you will. And I'm like, dude, no, you're not going to piss on me because listen, I'm the one that finds the deals. If you want the next deal, hey, let's go. If you don't, then just use me as a pissing pole, and
Yeah.
I'll
Right.
talk to you later. And I'll let the numbers speak for yourself.
Yeah.
So,
Good philosophy.
but Mike, what a story, man! What a story! What a great comeback! And I guess I gotta ask just because just for like my own sake, and because a lot of us don't pay attention, I think, to this to the wild card that I'm getting ready to ask about, but it's your health. Um, coming through my divorce and coming through the bankruptcy many years, of course, it's been several years ago now. One thing that I never really stopped long enough to think about was my health. Um, how how did your health change among those? Like, obviously, did you develop high blood pressure? Did you how did your health go along with everything that you had going on?
It's interesting because, like I said, I went from running marathons to being 35 pounds
Yeah,
overweight. I hated myself, right? Um, but over that next 7 years, I worked out 6 days a week. I worked out spiritually 6 days a week. I believe in the daily disciplines. We all need to have them, whether it's prayer and relationship with Jesus. It's whether it's meditation, but your exercise, the way you eat, what you put in your mind. All those things are part of that daily discipline in the morning or whenever you do that during the day. But for me, it's the morning. And, I worked on my mental health and I worked on my physical health just as much. And the mental health piece in
yeah,
prison, you really got to work on. I mean, it's so easy to go and get involved in stuff you don't need to get involved with, or it's so easy to let your environment control you. And it's similar to outside too. It's not just in prison, but I really worked on that stuff. And today, even, I just had a physical, and you know, uh, he said, "Man, I can't find anything wrong with you." I said, "Well, God, I'm
yeah.
glad about that."
Yeah,
But you
little
sound
silver lining there, I
disappointed.
guess, for considering everything you've been through. So, all right. Well, listen. Well, Mike, we're running out of time here,
Yeah.
and I've got a couple of questions we ask every guest that comes on the show. And the first of those questions, and obviously some of
Sure.
these things, the second question is probably going to mean a little bit more to you than the first one. But what is the best book that you have recently read or are currently reading?
Yeah. So, God, 2 weeks ago I'd have said something different. But first of all, I always got to lead with the Bible,
Yeah,
right? That's the best book I've ever read. But when it comes to a business book, I'm reading a book right now called Winning by Tim Grover. Um, Probably one of the best motivational books I've ever read in my life. So, I would tell people to devour it because it's one of those. I'm a very active reader, and there's not a page that doesn't have a
sure,
red mark or
sure.
some
Awesome.
highlights on
All
it.
right.
So,
Well, what is a dream vacation that you have either taken or hope to take?
yeah, dream vacation. Looking forward to being able to go out of the country here soon and do go to Greece, and that's
Well,
on
awesome,
my
man.
bucket
That's
list
great.
coming up.
Well, we appreciate you sharing your story with us here on Cashflow Pro, and of course, we always are looking for interesting stories. And by God, you delivered. So, um, what you had mentioned earlier about an ebook or a book that you wish
Yeah,
to give to the listeners, and of
yeah.
course, to go along with that, how can the listeners reach out to you if they have a question or would like to learn more about you, your story, or your coaching, or anything else?
Sure. Thanks, Casey. Yeah, I did write a book while I was gone called Exit Plan, and I wrote it because I spent so much money on coaching and training and seminars over the years, and great trainers, great teachers, and everybody teaches you how to find a deal, get in a deal, operate a deal, but nobody ever taught me how to get out. And I wanted people to know how to maximize the exit, how to maximize your profit in a deal. So I wrote a book called Exit Plan. If you're an active reader like me, you can go to my website and buy it, or you can download a free copy at mycoreintentions.com/free. And you can feel free. And somebody told me one time, they said, "Man, I went to print this. It's 260 pages."
Yeah,
I said,
it
"I
wasn't
told you
any
it's a
paper.
book." you know, so, yeah. To connect with me, man, wherever you hang out on social media, whether that's YouTube, so you could go subscribe to my channel, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, wherever,
Awesome.
Instagram, you'll
Mike,
find
thank
me
you so
there.
much for your time, and
So,
thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us and share your story with us, and so that we can learn more about you. And listeners, thank you so much today for your time and for listening to me ramble and take in Mike's story. And as always, please, please, please head down and leave us a 5-star review, and also type a review so that others may know what we talk about and what you enjoyed about the Cash Flow Pro podcast. And please, as always, as well, please smash that subscribe button so that you can be notified as we release new episodes. I hope everybody has a wonderful day. And Mike, thanks again. Cash Flow Pro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.